Hey friends, we are excited for a very special edition of Weekly Witness this week as we are in the Capitol office of Senator Sarah Eckhardt, a senator from here in the capital city of Austin, Senate District 14. She was a hero last week during the Senate Bill 2 debate, so wanted to have her on the program today. And Senator, really appreciate you having us in your office today. Thanks for the time.
I appreciate you coming.
Also love fellow LBJ school alum. We won't show our secret handshake because I don't want to, let the other folks know. But thank you so much. I want to start out with a softball question for you today.
Sure.
Senate Bill 2, it's something Texans of faith do not love. It is something we've talked about a lot on this program and in the Texas Impact family. For those who haven't been paying as close of attention, what is Senate Bill 2 and why is it bad for Texas?
Well, first of all, it's a vendor bill. It defunds public education. It resegregates us, and also it will probably raise your property taxes.
I don't love any of those things.
No.
I don't love any of those things. And Texans of faith certainly support public schools. And you mentioned it being a vendor bill. I'm curious, who is this for? Because you talked about during the debate the other day that half of the counties in Texas don't even have a private school that their students could attend. So who is this good for?
That's right. 140 counties in Texas don't have a public school. What this subsidy is for is to increase the customer base for private schools. It's a $1 billion subsidy for them to increase their pool that they can choose from. And that $1 billion subsidy quadruples by 2030 to an estimated $4 billion subsidy so that they can have a larger pool of students to choose from.
You talk about math. I don't love math. It's been a while since I took a math class. But there was a lot of math going on the floor. And I think the thing that people thought was craziest about this bill when it came out is that in the Senate version, in Senate Bill 2, there's a $10,000 voucher or education savings account or coupon, depending on what we want to call it, for students, or $11,500 for students with disabilities. But the basic allotment for a typical kid in public school is $6,100.
Más o menos.
Yeah, in that ballpark. There were some claiming that $6,100 isn't a good number to go off of. They should be looking at $14,000 or $16,000 or some other crazy number like that. Talk to us about that math and what the reality is.
So Senator Creighton was arguing apples to oranges. Mm-hmm. If you make an apples to apples comparison of the type of student that private schools typically accept, those are the students that would receive in public school what is known as the basic allotment, which is roughly $6,000. Those are kids who don't have special needs. They don't have physical or mental health challenges. They don't have limited English proficiency. They are your basic kid. And for that, the basic allotment in public schools is roughly $6,000. And for this subsidy, these private schools will receive $10,000 for that kid who is going to do pretty good in school and sail on through feeling fine. But it doesn't take into account all of the kids who do have special needs for which we do a provision above the basic allotment. But those are kids private schools are not going to take.
Right. So what kind of things are in the difference between that $6,000 basic allotment and the much higher number that other folks are using? Is that mostly special needs or?
What's in there is special education, limited English proficiency, accommodations for physical disability, and other such additions that the state has parceled out in special pots of money.
I would assume would transportation also be in that pot?
Transportation would be in that pot as well.
Because that's not guaranteed for students who?
There's a security allotment as well.
Okay.
So there are different pots of money that go to public education, certainly, but the apples to apples comparison for equivalent kids, Johnny and Mikey, one in private school and one in public school, is really the basic allotment, which is $6,000 compared to the $10,000 voucher.
Now, one of the terms that we'll stay on math for a few minutes. One of the phrases that kept coming up over and over again during the conversation on the floor was protecting income vulnerable populations.
That was hilarious.
I know, it was driving me crazy. In part because they define income vulnerable populations in the bill as 500% of federal poverty level, which is, I believe, like $160,000 for a family. Any idea where that number came from? I would love it if that number was used for things like, Medicaid and CHIP and other programs.
Absolutely.
Right?
Let's apply the $160,000 metric to, food, nutritional programs and subsidized healthcare and subsidized housing. How about it?
Right.
Yeah, that was laughable. I don't know where Brandon Creighton came up with the 500% of federal poverty, but I suspect it was to make the 80% preference so broad. The first 80% goes to families that are at 500% FPL or below. That's his argument that this is for those income vulnerable families. And then the other 20% is not income limited. It's sky's limit. You could get a $10,000 voucher for a millionaire's kid.
Right. All right. So we're gonna do a little true and false. This is gonna be a little test time here. All right. You ready for this? We're gonna do rapid fire true or false. So true or false, passing a voucher bill would not take money out of public schools.
False.
False. All right. Tell us why.
The funding for public education in Texas has been pretty much flat since 2019. And so we have yet to change that. There is a promise that we will change it at some point in this session. But so far, public education investment has been pretty flat since 2019. And yet, we just voted to add a $1 billion subsidy to private schools that quadruples to $4 billion.
Yeah. I would add on top of that also, like if students leave public schools to take advantage of this voucher, that would also impact local schools, right?
It would. For just a 1% transfer of public schools over to private schools, AISD, I think, I'll have to go back and take a look at the number, but the hit is significant. It's in, I believe, I don't want to make up numbers here, but it is a significant
big chunk.
Hit.
Yeah, big chunk. All right. I'll grade you as passing on answer number one. All right. So true or false, number two. This bill would further segregate Texas young people and largely give funds to people already paying for private schools.
That is absolutely true. And Brandon Creighton admitted it in questioning on the floor.
Yeah. And so what's that look like? Why do you think it'll have that impact?
The analysis, all credible analysis indicates that above 70% of the student body in private schools currently are white. And all credible analysis of the functioning of this bill indicates that more than 75% of those who actually get this voucher will be students who are already in private school.
Right.
So the other 25% who aren't currently in private school will have a chance to be selected by the private school. But let's face it, if a private school is already selecting mostly white kids, they're going to keep selecting mostly white kids.
I keep seeing that phrase that this is school choice for the private school, not for the families.
Absolutely.
Right? This next one is from a conversation I had with a rural school superintendent last year who talked a lot about the fact that private schools, well, in his words, play an important part in our community, but shouldn't be funded with taxpayer dollars and have no accountability. So I guess I kind of gave the answer away to this one. But true or false, Senate Bill 2 is a giant giveaway of public dollars to unaccountable institutions with no public oversight requirements.
Absolutely true. And frankly, if you are a private business, I'm all down for you having as minimal regulation as possible. I don't want to get up in your grill, but if you're going to take money from the from the state government, if you want to be subsidized in your business model, then you need to have some accountability. And this bill does not contain much in the way of accountability.
And it seems like that's a historically conservative argument, right? That public dollars should have accountability tied to it.
Absolutely.
Right?
As a matter of fact, they have all kinds of accountability tied to public dollars going to public education.
All right, I think we talked about this one a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and pitch it back to you anyway. True or false, a voucher program does not guarantee school choice for parents, but would allow private schools a wider range of people to choose from who meet their specific criteria?
100%.
All right. And last but not least, and this one actually came from your staff, so hopefully you get this one right. This bill would require waiving federal rights if families take the extra money for disabilities.
That
True or
is
false?
absolutely true. And what parent, I was speaking with a parent just the other day who said she has a severely disabled child, and that child is in public school, and public school makes all of the necessary accommodations, and she's very happy with it. And she said, why in the world would I sell my child out for $11,500 to a school that has, first of all, will never accept my child.
Right.
And even if they did, would never accommodate my child to the extent public schools are required to.
Right. I will allow our listeners to grade you. I give you an A+ on the true and false section, but we have a lot of school teachers and school administrators who listen. So post in the comments, let us know how Senator Eckhardt did on that portion of the test. Now, real talk time, Senator. This passed in a hurry out of the Senate and is now heading to the House. One of the things we like to give our listeners every week is some homework assignments. So what do you hope listeners will do if they oppose Senate Bill 2? What's the next step you hope they'll take?
What I hope that they'll take, and I hope you take this step, please reach out to all of the Republican House members and tell them that this bill is a vendor bill, that it resegregates our schools, that it defunds public education, and it will raise property taxes. There is nothing good about this bill. Private schools are fine. They don't need the help, but public education does. So show up at the hearings, write the Republicans in the House, and advocate for every way we can make this bill less bad. Lots and lots of floor amendments should happen. And we did a lot of floor amendments in the Senate. The Republican authored the bill would not accept a single floor amendment. And to the extent he accepted some light tweaks behind the scenes, he insisted that they come under a Republican's name rather than a Democrat's name.
What you are an elected representative, you hear from your people often. What's the most effective way that they can communicate with those House members?
The most effective way is to send emails, send letters, show up at the hearings, and show up with lots of people if you can. Wear matching T-shirts, look big, bring your friends. It's frustrating work to show up and testify at a hearing. It's designed to be frustrating, frankly. So I would suggest definitely send letters and send emails, show up with testimonials, bring your friends, be loud. This cannot happen to our public education system. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but public education is the greatest tool for prosperity that democracy has ever created.
We love our public schools. I do want to give you just a second to, I want to ask a follow-up on the property tax question, because I think a lot of our listeners love public schools, and I think they're going to make those calls regardless. But I think there's another subset of the population who really cares about property taxes. And you mentioned that this would increase your property taxes twice. So I want to give you a chance. Why would it increase property taxes?
When the state doesn't pay its fair share under its constitutional obligations to provide a system of free public schools for every child. When it doesn't pay its fair share, it relies on local property tax to make up the difference. And so when it migrates money over to private schools, rather than paying their fair share, it forces local property taxpayers to pony up for what the state is not funding. And so your local property taxes go up. We've seen it all across the state when the state refused to increase the basic allotment for years and then withheld the $4.5 billion in the last biennium. School districts across the state went out for bond on property taxes to make up the difference. This is not speculative. This is the actual witnessed effect when the state does not appropriately fund public education and further starts funding an alternative educational system, your property taxes will go up.
Well, I don't want that, and I love public schools. I also wanted to follow up. You said call your Republican representatives. We think that's important, but your Democratic representatives need to hear from you too, right? We're not taking anybody
They
for
need
granted.
to hear the love. It's difficult to do this work sometimes, and it was helpful, frankly, as we were debating the bill on Wednesday, to hear people protesting outside the doors of the chamber. Actually, it made it a little easier to stand up to this really, really bad policy.
I wonder if before we close out, if you can give a word of hope, because I think there are a lot of people who didn't love that this passed so quickly out of the Senate. But the reality is the Senate passed this 4 times a couple years ago, and the House did stand up and say they supported public schools. This isn't a done deal yet, right? It's worth the fight in the House?
It's absolutely worth the fight in the House. The House has a chance to kill this bill. And they've done it before, and we want to help. So everything that we can do to help them, which includes cards and letters, emails, showing up at the hearings, protesting, telling your Democratic representatives or your Republican representatives who stood up. We did have one Republican in the Senate stand up. Show your love for those who are doing the brave thing and standing up against this policy.
All right, Senator, last word. Why should people support our public schools? Why should we do this work?
Again, I'm the product of public school. My 2 kids are the product of public school. Proof is in the pudding. If you like numbers, just go back and look. Public education floats all boats. We are all better off for public education universally available to every member of our society. It has done more things to make us prosperous, healthy, and longer lived. We actually live longer now that education is more broadly available than it was at the beginning of the last century.
I love all of that. Senator Eckhardt, thank you so much for your public witness, for your work on this issue. And friends, we have our homework assignment. Let's make those calls. Let's send those emails. Let's show up at the Capitol. Let's protect Texas public schools.
Thank you.
Thanks again.